The final. All right, we're gonna cut out me singing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the A Life Well Lived, a Physician's Guide to Wealth podcast. We have a very special guest here. We're actually recording in the same town as well, which that doesn't happen all the time. I met Donovan Miske locally in Traverse City through some physician friends, and he does some incredible work in the physician space and just has been a great human being, always a joy to talk to. So I think you guys are going to get a lot out of today's episode. And kind of the general idea for today is, a lot of physicians sometimes feel like they're, is this all there is, right? You're stuck in the grind, you're burned out, you're kind of craving a little bit more control and autonomy. So if you ever have felt that way, or you kind of feel like you're stuck in the system, no offense to the system, but I know systems aren't always the best, right? And this episode is for you. So we're just going to kind of talk about the silent trap too many physicians fall into, and the real world ways to break free without blowing up your career. And this is through strategically building alternative income streams like medical directorships, locums work, simple clinics, amongst other things that Donovan helps a lot of his physician clients that he works with, just to essentially reduce hospital dependency and gain the freedom to pursue your ideal practice environment or even potentially a semi-early retirement. So, Donovan, I'll give you your little intro here in a second, but just want to say thanks for being here. This is awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, this is good. This is going to be awesome. So I think, I think a lot of, if you're early in your career, late stage resident or a new attending and you're unsure how to build freedom from the start, then this is for you. If you're in the middle of your career and you're feeling, maybe a little bit burned out, and we know the statistics of Medscape saying that 42% of physicians report burnout every single year, then this would be you. If you're an existing locums physician who wants to build something on their own on the side, maybe other avenues outside of that, then this is for you. And then this could also be for like a dual physician family navigating cash flow, burnout, and dreams of something different potentially. But anyways, if you're here and you're listening, this is for you. So thank you for being here. So Donovan, in preparation for this, I read just kind of the super cool little snippet on your website of kind of like your story, which, a lot of the stuff I didn't even know. I kind of forgot Kona was named after your dog, right? So Kona Medical Consulting is named after Donovan's dog, beloved dog, and Donovan is a CEO and founder. But before the dog and the company, he managed a wildly successful hospitality MSO. And at a client's request, and once again, I didn't know this story, so I thought this was great. And I was like, I got to read this. He was asked to look into a failing medical clinic on the verge of bankruptcy as a courtesy. So just something out of the goodness of your heart. And the trajectory of his future was set in place. This was the first challenging puzzle Donovan experienced, and he was captivated. He provided the company with a step-by-step game plan for success in marketing, finance, staffing, IT infrastructure, and current market trends based on the hospitality industry. And this would later turn into your business wellness exam, which I think is interesting. I'm sure you can talk a little bit more about that later. Just to report it also revealed a massive embezzlement concern with the current office manager, a series of missing charges from surgical cases, which assisted the client in understanding the scope of the company's risk. So over time, the hospitality influence approach evolved into one of the first formally recognized standards for full clinic operational health, which has since been optimized over 1,000 times. So something really cool, also some, I'll talk great about you so you don't have to do it for yourself, right? So you've helped with 12,000 plus physicians in 4 different countries. There's a 41% average overhead for clinic operation. You are in the 10th percentile. Your MSO clinics consistently perform at the top of the MGMA data drive. I mean, these statistics go on and on and on and on, and I just think you're wonderful. So I won't sit here and talk about you for the full hour, but I thought you at least deserve a pretty cool introduction because you do some awesome things. And you can go, we'll talk about where people can find you at the end. But thanks for being here. This is going to be super fun. And so let's kind of talk about kind of like from burnout to breakout, and maybe talk about some like real client journeys and stories that you've seen, right? So I always hate to say like let's start with maybe like a not so good, maybe even like horror story. I don't like, but I kind of feel like that might captivate the audience, right? Have you seen any like stories of a physician that either waited too long or they took the leap and they did it wrong? Like what kind of comes to mind?
All right. So we've experienced a lot of horror stories to the point that we set them before we're even willing to accept them as clients. We're like, hey, this is something you need to be warned about. So naturally, in our position at Kona, we get approached by physicians who are either on the verge of burnout or they want whatever the deal is. They want to open up an independent clinic, and this is just from our lens into the medical industry. And so they want to open up a medical clinic for doctors who know what an MSO is, a managed service organization, which is the type of company that Kona is. They reach out to people like us. So early on, we didn't have as much of a checklist or a guide like this. We didn't tell people this secret sauce before they contacted us. So a physician might contact us. They've been working at a hospital. Their RVUs are going down. They're feeling the squeeze, and they want to open up a medical clinic, an independent one. I'm leaving. I'm going to do it my way. Great. We support that. I love it. But when they skip some of these steps, they say, okay, I want to open up the clinic. Here's some money for the bank. Here's some money to open it up. Let's go. Sometimes it doesn't go as planned, right? Because they don't create that extra cushion. They're so reliant on that cash flow that they've been getting steadily from the hospital for so many years. It's not just flipping a switch and opening up an independent medical clinic. So we've got this one doctor early on in my career who had contacted us and said, I want to open up a clinic. Here's the exact amount I'm willing to spend on it. And I'm going to hold you to the 3-month timeline, let's say. You're going to be open in 3 months. Great. So we set up everything we possibly can for this doctor in that time. And there's this one local state program that manages the Medicaid and the majority of the Medicare credentialing. They have to go through this one extra step. And some states have these, some states don't. For this doctor, they had to go through this extra step. And the group only meets once every 3 months to do their accepting of the credentialing. So this doctor had all these plans. He was definitive. In 3 months, I'm opening. I put in my notice at the hospital and everything. He had to wait an additional 3 months. He had 3 months where he couldn't do anything, which sounds nice. But his cash flow per preparation was, I quit one job, I immediately start making almost the same at my new clinic.
Ouch.
And so, yeah, he was basically financially just ruined for 3 months. I mean, they survived, but it didn't need to be that way. There are so many things that could have been done to not be that way. We've got another pretty interesting story. This was not a client, but this is one of those lessons you learned from observing others. This one physician, we know this person's story because it's a classic exercise in focusing on having an expense problem instead of an income problem. A lot of clinics feel like if you just keep reducing expenses, you're going to be fine. Well, that's not really a sound financial strategy. Sometimes it's an income issue. And with this particular doctor, we just wanted every corner possibly to be cut to save some money. And I vividly remember this one excerpt from this interview with this physician. It was truly like one of the worst case scenario. They would, to save money, they would book every Tuesday a 2-hour period where he could drive, pick up his dry cleaning in the middle of the day, and then come back to the clinic. That's just like the one aspect of this one whole interview with this doctor. I remember, I was thinking, you could have made $1,000 during that period of time, but to save money, you went to go pick up your own dry cleaning during that. And that was just indicative of the entire rest of the clinic. I could go on and on with anecdotes about that particular clinic, but there are methods where you can make it so even if you have those kind of ideologies of, let's call it fiscal conservancy, you can create enough passive revenue or enough cushion, steady cushion, that's not going to make or break your clinic. Like, because of that, the financial literacy, I suppose, of that one particular physician's clinic and their individual experience, they created a situation where that going to pick up their own dry cleaning was a financial, just Achilles heel, that one thing to their whole company, the act of picking up dry cleaning might make you go bankrupt. Like that's just wild.
That is wild. That is wild. And
And we
I,
got really great stories too. So I mean, these are just two. I'm
well,
not trying to scare anybody. Everybody probably knows a physician in these exact situations. Everybody in the
yeah.
medical field
And
knows.
that's why I always, typically when I bring a guest on, I like starting there because that's the best way to learn, right? Either from our own stories, which always is the best teacher, or from another person's story. So I feel like that's the best. It reminded me of like Howard Schultz, the founder, or not the founder, but he bought Starbucks and grew it to where it is now. There's a book that he wrote about, like he left Starbucks and then had to step back in like 2008, 2009. And he always had like the employee benefits even for part-time employees because his dad was sick and passed away because he didn't have health insurance or something like that. Anyways, this is complete side tangent, but the all the shareholders when he stepped back in wanted them to like get rid of the health insurance program, and it was like probably at least $500 million decision, to the bottom line. But he, stood by his values and said, "I will not do this. This is why we have such a great culture and such great employees." So I'm thinking of that dry cleaning analogy, and I'm sure it was a ripple effect into many other places of the
Sure.
business outside of the dry cleaning.
Yeah. Well, that's just one of the best little anecdotes of that thing. There's
Yeah.
hundreds of them. That's just one person.
So I know we'll get into success stories throughout this, but I'm sure you've also seen some like home runs, right? So can you think like just off the top of your head, maybe one simple story of a physician that made some like powerful moves, whether it was through locum, side gigs, directorships,
Yeah.
kind of help them reclaim their time and energy?
Yeah. So again, our lens into this topic is that physicians are usually reaching out to us to help them start a clinic. So there are many other reasons that you might want to pursue this, but that's just our unique. That's why they reach out to us, so we know these stories. And we had this one young psychiatrist just completed residency and just got employed at a local hospital, and this individual wanted to make all the right financial choices, and I happen to know this psychiatrist a little on the personal level because we would host credentialing seminars at the university just to kind of give them a little. This is the business of medicine. You don't get to learn much about this. You should know about this. This is going to be critical to your future. And this psychiatrist approached me after the class and said, "I don't know what my grand plan is, but I do know that I'm going to work for the hospital for a little bit, get my skills up, and then I plan on having my own independent clinic in the future." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is so great to hear. Let me lay out some things that I really wish you would do before you open up this clinic." And we talked about all these strategies we're about to talk about. But this psychiatrist set up something like, I want to say like 12 medical directorships with different. There was a local community mental health organization. There was an addiction treatment service. There was an infusion clinic. There was some stuff, right? And each one of them was paying him about $1,000 to $3,000 a month. He set up one small, simple clinic that was operated by a nurse practitioner. He did all of this. By the way, just talking to us, he physically did none of this. This was just something he set up and signed a piece of paper for. I'm not denying that there was some risk or some work that needed to be done, but completely negligible compared to his other main job. Maybe an hour of attention a week, and whatever. He stacked up some of these items. His income is over $800,000 a year. He's 28 years old, psychiatrist. He's lined it up so that he could reasonably. I'm sorry, his independent medical revenue is 800,000. He also gets a salary from a hospital that I'm assuming is $300,000 to $400,000 a year. So he set up all these passive income streams. This guy can do whatever he wants. He now has five psychiatry clinics and a whole bunch of other things set up, but he set it up in such an intelligent way right out the gate that he had no concerns whatsoever about. Let's say he quits his job at the hospital, not panicking. Let's say he wants to open up a clinic, but I want to take a vacation for a month too, not panicking. he has it's all good for the rest of his life now. And it was just through the power of stacking up some of these items that we're going to talk about. It's Most physicians are pretty jealous of this guy. He's just and he did it all with hardly lifted finger. I cannot
Yeah.
stress that enough.
Yeah, and for those listening, of course, you can't wave a magic wand and just have this. We'll get into what that process looks like here in a second because I'm sure you have to be intentional, right? But that's a really awesome story, and like you said, it's being intentional, taking a little bit of risk, and doing things the right way. So we'll talk about some of that stacking here in a second. But what a great story! I might be a little jealous too. Maybe no, I'm just kidding.
You go back to school, become a psychiatrist.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be easy, right? 8 years later.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are the psychiatry one is a unique one that has the ability to stack up these more than some others, just because of the
Uh,
addiction treatment and the community mental health organization. Some of the psychiatry related medical directorships that are open directly to them,
that makes sense.
but primary care and dermatology and cardio, all the specialties have their own angle into this. All of
Mhm.
them. Yes.
So I'm sure the audience is eager to kind of be like, okay, how do we do this? Real
Yeah.
quick, just one last quick question. I know we talked about it. Like, what are some common symptoms you see physicians experiencing before they come talk to you to make this move? I know you talked about like burnout, RVUs going down, no
Yeah.
control over their call schedule, things like what else? All the
Oh,
above.
all the classics, yes. So those items you just listed for sure. Um, One of the most interesting ones I find is they also get taken advantage of quite often by professional organizations,
Hmm.
um, accountants and lawyers. I'm not disparaging them at all, but I'm just saying that when sometimes when a physician's thinking I need to open up a new clinic, I should ask my CPA. Reasonable thought. I mean that makes perfect logical sense. CPA probably charges 100 times more than an MSO charges to set up a LLC, even. Or an attorney might say, "Oh yeah, you got to have all these stacks of these documents." Again, perfectly logical to talk to the lawyer. That is, you want to start a business, talk to a lawyer and or CPA. It makes a lot of sense. It really does. Um, but they spend all this money to start the company, and that's just in the professional fee. That's not actually doing anything for them. They're not actually operating a clinic. That's not the professional aspect of the medical world is interesting because they are the worker bee and the owner. Whereas at a lawyer and a CPA, like lawyers learn how to run a business during school. CPAs obviously do as well. So it's interesting that it doesn't work in the other approach, right? Like if a lawyer gets in a car accident and wants to have their life saved, and a doctor helps them, it's an absolute benefit that way. It makes perfect sense. The other way is can be quite a financial hardship. So we notice they pour a lot of money into just getting the company started, not actually operating anything. Another common thing that we see is they'll make all this investment into infrastructure without having step two even
Hmm.
set up. So sometimes they're just done before they even start. Um, but probably the most common squeeze we see where they approach us, and again, that's just our unique lens into this world. They they're working at a hospital, and the RVU compensation just keeps dropping. And yes, they sit at the table and they have negotiations, and they say, I'm going to open up my own clinic, and if you don't do this, and all these other common negotiation tactics, and it works for a year, maybe two, uh, maybe three in the extreme. Um, but they wait till their RVUs are such a low compensated amount. And for those of us don't know, an RVU is it's a simple metric for compensating based on uh, CPT codes and other kinds of work that's done. So instead of getting paid a salary like I get paid $100,000 a year at place, they say I'm going to compensate you a certain amount per RVU. So the certain work you do, it takes into consideration the malpractice, the amount of skill into it, the amount of time. It takes all these things into consideration. And it's been a common statistic that hospitals have leveraged truly against physicians for a long time to compensate them for the work that they've done.
Hmm.
Right? It'd be like compensating a person at a pizza shop by how many toppings they put on the pizza. They don't have full control over that. Right? It doesn't make much sense. But if you just kept reducing how much you're going to compensate them per ingredient added to pizza, eventually they're going to leave. And that's just a common equation to prevent seniority benefit in a hospital situation.
Yeah.
Which that's the economy steer. I'm not faulting a hospital with this. I'm not saying that this is I support this or I don't. I'm saying that is a common strategy, and they wait till it gets too low to start thinking about these things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've definitely had many conversations. I'm still learning from you today as we go. I've had many conversations with physicians. It's like, cost of goods have gone up significantly in the last 4 years, but like their income has maybe stayed steady or come down even, like, compared to where it was, which is frustrating. So it sounds like a combination of burnout and compensation, and then overall probably just not having like autonomy or control over their life and lifestyle. Quick,
Absolutely, absolutely.
quick, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, one aspect to it is some of that stuff. No matter if you're in an independent clinic or you have full control, you don't have full control. Some of that is out of your hands as well, right? In America, we get compensated by insurance companies. And with CMS being kind of the metric, the Medicare fee schedule being the metric for what other insurance companies are going to compensate you from, that compensation might not rise or fall according to the economy. And prime example right now in our history where it is quite a large margin of difference.
Hmm.
And that has nothing to do with a political party or anything like that. I'm just saying like that number, that margin goes up and down all the time. And that's out of a physician's ability to control. So when you use things like an RVU, like a relative value unit, that amount might not also have a relative, it may not actually be related to the actual compensation that they have. So you need to create cushion because you don't have full control over your compensation. Even concierge doctors, which is a large turnaround, who get to set their own fees, they're still at the mercy of how many people they have on their census. So we may not have full control. These are some things you can control.
Hmm.
Please consider.
Very interesting. So let's get into the side gig playbook then. Kind of like what are the small moves that you have to be intentional about to kind of make like a big impact. So like if a physician listening to this right now is like, okay, Donovan James, this all sounds great. The pizza also sounds good. Feel free to share your favorite. I'll go Jets Pizza, just classic pepperoni square. Last guest we had on the podcast, he was asking us, John Apino, who I introduced you to, was asking us about our favorite tacos, and I said Mama Lou's. So,
Of course, no, I agree.
but they're like, okay, Donovan James, this all sounds good in theory, but like, how do I do it, right? So, if a physician's sitting here listening right now and they want to build to like some passive income on the side or other maybe higher like RVU income, right? Or higher income for maybe not directly an RVU, but get paid more for their time,
Yeah,
essentially. Every time they show up hour over hour. I know locums is one like great way to do this, right?
absolutely.
Outside of their W-2 hospital role, like what does the runway usually look like? And then what are some like, specific strategies like the medical directorship, locums work, simple clinics, like, what comes to mind? What would be your advice for that?
Yeah, so you already highlighted the pathways. So medical directorships is a big one. Locums work is a big one. Creating simple clinics, it's another one. There's a lot of what I would consider a pathway of more obscure temporary items, but the big three you already listed, and those are probably the most important. So with medical directorships, before we even do any of that, all physicians should be incorporated as themselves as well. Like we should create their own company, even
Hmm.
if they're W-2 employee at the hospital. Fine, great, but you should also have a separate entity for yourself, and that's going to be the entity that we're going to stack these items into. If you're contacting us because you want to start an independent clinic or something like that, we're going to help you create that whole pathway already by saying we're starting with this. We'll move on to the other items, the credentialing, all the other things you might need to do in the future. But for now, let's figure out which or all of these paths we're going to explore before we even do that, the reason you reached out to us initially. And medical directorships are probably the easiest. Well, they can be the easiest and the hardest. I want to emphasize that. But a medical directorship is a great, steady, static income every month. And a common arrangement is that you get paid, let's say, $500 to $3,000 for the average simple medical directorship. And a medical directorship is an interesting barrier to entry for others that will ensure that physicians stay associated with these particular kinds of businesses. So earlier when I was saying, like, the doctors are the professionals, they're the worker bees and the owners of the entity, right? Uh, well, that's good. That's a reasonable thing for the medical world. So let's say someone else wants to start a infusion clinic. They want to do just a simple Meyer bag infusions, hangover cures, things like that. They can't create that company and take insurance without a doctor being associated with the company. So the medical directorship is what allows them to create their type 2 NPI. The type 2 NPI is the facility NPI. It's the thing that says, this is a business, it's a medical business, they're located here, essentially, to the government. And all the other entities that would be associated with them. So that person can't start that clinic without a medical director. And the medical director say, hey, I will make sure that you're medically sound and safe to do this. Not the individual, but the business is going to have, proper compliance protocols. You're not going to take patients that have this medical concern, that medical concern, or these presenting symptoms. You're not going to give them infusion. It's a narrow runway of concern, but still the medical directorship is going to take the risk of supporting and helping that clinic out. And to compensate, that clinic might say, I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month and $1 per patient that comes in and you review their chart, co-sign it, or something like that. There's infinite numbers of arrangements like that. When you're an MSO like us, we've got them all prepackaged up. We go, okay, this is exactly the agreement we're going to sign with you to do this kind of business, and here's a medical director that's going to step in and do this one. We make it really easy because we're not reinventing the wheel. We've done this a bunch of times. But if you are exploring this for the first time, you have to consider things like indemnification and malpractice and everything else associated with these kind of medical directorships. Some provide you a lot of protection, some do not. I would generally say go for the low-hanging fruit, the easiest ones, and stack many of them up. So I gave the example of the infusion center. That's probably one of the most common entryways. There's a big explosion right now in functional medicine clinics and things like that. These are all great angles. There's med spas. There's so many types of businesses that need medical directorships. That is a static monthly income, typically. Sometimes a variable compensation, such as per chart review, per patient in our census. Sometimes things like that. Usually, the more you're compensated, the more risk there is. That's a common correlation. However, sometimes you get lucky, and there's no correlation. High medical directorship compensation and almost no risk. But usually it's pretty balanced. So don't emphasize one medical directorship with large compensation. Emphasize low risk. That's what we would recommend. So you don't need to worry about it. The locums work is another one. Now, this is particularly good for the person who is transitioning from a hospital setting or another clinic that they're disgruntled at or burnt out with into an independent clinic. So you're going to do locums work temporarily. There's a lot of physicians who've made their life doing locums exclusively. That's wonderful. You can do that. You obviously get paid more. You get to do some travel. The scheduling is usually pretty inconvenient, but there's always a desperate need for locums work all over the country. Problem is, sometimes the locum work is needed in the areas that are most inconvenient to the physician. So I would say that's not like a high risk, but it's a large inconvenience as well. And that is direct compensation. Typically, your time is exchanged for money, as opposed to a medical directorship. That's going in the background. You're not exchanging your time much for that. Sometimes there's some upfront work, and then I bet there's some doctors in our client list that have medical directorships they've completely forgotten about, to be honest. And, it's just automated, and there's so many controls and checks and balances in it. It just keeps going, and they don't have to worry about it. Their name is truly on a credentialing form. That's what they've done. That's what they've provided. That's what they actively do. The name on a list. Um, there's also just simple clinics. I cannot stress like simple clinics enough. Medical weight loss, all the rage right now. Whether you're for it or against the GLP-1 stuff, I'm not. That's not what I'm commenting on. It's just that by design is a simple clinic. If someone comes in, you do a simple interview, you do a simple workup, you can prescribe. Low risk, here's the tables for these things as identified by the company and supported by CMS. That's what I mean, low risk. I mean, it's on paper, it says, these are the concerns. There might be concerns beyond what's on paper. Not that I'm not a physician myself, but the operation of a medical weight loss clinic can be quite simple to the point where many of them are hiring a nurse practitioner to do the medical side of it. They hire an MSO like us to do literally everything else. And this machine just keeps turning for revenue for them. The concern, though, is that you still have to build a client base. You still need people to come. You still have a salary for, let's say, a nurse practitioner and the operation of the clinic to consider. So sometimes that can be a little difficult. Sometimes you've been building that up in your other practice. You've been dropping the hint that you know a medical weight loss clinic, or you might be associated with one, or that patient's seeing you in this clinic, they'll consider that place, whatever the case may be. Those are good examples of each of the three pathways, and I can get into the more vague path if you'd like as well, real quick. It's less common, but yes.
Yeah, no, I'd be curious to explore the less common, and those are all really interesting. One thing I was curious about, just because I know, we have some experience working with locums. We actually have like a mini show within this show called the Locums Lowdown that I want to continue to bring more value to, because I just know from our standpoint, as a lot of locums, most locums are 1099
Yep.
positions, and there's a lot more that just makes everything more complicated, but also a lot more opportunity from like a personal financial standpoint.
Yes.
Are the medical directorships, would that be like 1099 income as well, or is that W-2, or is that like kind of all over the place?
It's a little bit all over the place, but
Okay.
usually we set it up to be 1099. So when I mentioned earlier that we first form the company and
Yeah.
then we pour the income through there, there's a reason for that. Is that normally when we approach these different pathways, we'll say, here's the company you're compensating, or here's the 1099, or here's the we decide the arrangement for
Okay.
the revenue stream. And sometimes physicians want to balance that out for tax benefits and other things that you would know much more about,
Right.
on how they would set up those that overall balance of their personal wealth and their uh, professional revenue stream and everything else. There's all these different angles that could be considered, but most of these things are 1099, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. No, all really, really interesting. And it's always great having people on the show because I always learn new things, right? So yeah, if you want to talk, we're going to talk about some like alternative potential side gigs as well, or a little bit, like you said, more vague
Yeah.
routes.
Yeah,
Let's
so
do
hey,
it.
one of my favorite ones is, and we've actually got some younger and older doctors who love some of these more obscure ones, and they've turned it into their whole career. One of my favorites is an event doctor. So
Interesting.
an entity like any big concert you've ever heard of, Electric Forest, Coachella, any of these big things, got doctors on scene, and it's not a you're not getting there's not an event every day that you can participate in. But if you did want to make that your thing, we have a young physician basis travels from festival to festival, and that's what this particular physician loves is that scene and I think they work like 3 days on site at the event, and then they don't work for 2 weeks, and they have another 3 day event, so on and so forth, as an event doctor. The compensation is usually quite high. They get free tickets to the event. They like that. That's not for everybody, but there's a lot of events that anybody would like. And we have this wonderful festival here in Traverse City called the Cherry Festival. I'm sure they have an event doctor arrangement of some sort. There's infinite numbers of events, and the physician themselves usually has their ear close enough to the ground in their local community to know which things might need it. Um, Another one that's a little obscure, but I also really like, is the hotel associated doctor. So this is a more rare one, but some hotels have um, either, let's say, like high profile guests, or they have a lot of foreigners traveling in. We work with one that has a lot of ambassadors that happen to be staying at this one particular hotel in this one particular place. Um, and they pay to have a doctor on site in case anything happens. Just if there's an emergency, boom, this person will be here in a few minutes. And while each of these more obscure revenue streams have their own unique challenges, like you can't just leave the hospital at a certain hour. Like there's things that you can't. Everyone's got their own unique situation, and some of these do not work for them. The three big paths are the ones that are very well outlined. People can consider and think about them and how it works with their schedule or their capability quite easily. These more obscure ones are complicated. There's a lot of factors going into them. The obscure ones are things like that. Events, particular businesses having a physician on the side, personal physicians. We know some doctors that have two clients.
Hmm.
And it's quite amazing. But again, the unique challenges, how's that going to fall into your lap, right? Each
Right.
one of them had a unique situation that was like, here, this opportunity is presenting itself. Will you be this person's personal physician? Um, and in that same vein, sometimes people, they're not just doing it out of the compensation is the only motivator. Um, we have some physicians that use the compensation they receive from one obscure pathway to allow them to volunteer as the director of some wonderful local homegrown organization that works with children with needs of some sort, let's say. I'm not making it so this is just a money grab. I'm saying, like, you can balance out how you morally might feel about one item versus the other through these kinds of pathways as well. This is all about individual choice and freedom. You can choose how to stack these as you wish.
Yeah, and hopefully for the listener, this is just kind of opening your mind to new creative things. I mean, I've been working with physicians for 8 years now, and some of these things that you mentioned today, I never even thought about. Like, hey, you want to go on tour with Kygo or Rufus Du Sol for a year in festival
Yeah.
house? But maybe a listener might have a festival like in their hometown or something like that that they could maybe not volunteer, but to see if they could work it next time it rolls around or something like that. That's really really unique.
And by that same token, too, sometimes there's one of those that are non-compensated where they may volunteer out of the goodness of their heart to do,
Mhm.
and then it might become a compensated thing, or because you're listed on something somewhere, one of the large compensated entities might go, "Hey, this person works for that festival. I love that festival. I'd like you to come work for mine as
Yeah,
well if you'd be willing." So
yeah.
sometimes it's a long game strategy as well. It's not an immediate reward.
And I would say, the moral of the story, as long as you have an open mind, right? There's a lot more opportunities that could potentially be out there for you if you open your mind, and if you just kind of, now that you hear this and it's in your mind, you might be thinking about it more, right? Just like, I
Hmm.
mean, probably you and me, I never thought I would be specializing with physicians and have a physician only exclusive money podcast. It kind of just like started happening, right? And it's kind of crazy how things in life like line up when you're paying attention to them. It's like when you want to buy a new car and now you think like, oh, everyone has that car, I don't want it, but you're just thinking about that car so you see it everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same type of thing. So hopefully this is planting a lot of seeds in everybody's head. Um, and I know you talked about a little bit about stacking and the kind of the power of that. Do you want to talk any further about that or break down
Yeah,
anything further kind of on some of the strategies we just talked about?
definitely, definitely. So as an MSO, we're usually supporting physicians in the back office operations. MSO stands for Managed Service Organization. So we're usually doing one aspect, they're doing another aspect when they work with us. Stacking is important because you can stack things in a way where you may not need a company like ours, or you may be able to prevent the need to hire a company like ours until you actually do need us, right? Like there's things you can stack in the background intelligently. So let's go back to that 28-year-old psychiatrist that we all hate, right? He's just so successful. He stacked up everything just right. During residency, this individual we were speaking with, so we really gave this kid the cheat codes to this whole thing early on. And don't let this be a deterrent for someone who's older or anything else that thinks, okay, well, this kid did it so young. This is the lottery winner story. This is
Mm-hmm.
definitely in the top tier. But you can do this anytime, and you should do this anytime. So during residency, he stacked up intelligently so that when he finally got to be able to practice independently and be hired by a hospital or whatever, he already had a few items in his stack and it was only doing more. So one was a board member of an entity. One was the medical counsel for a venture capital entity. I'm talking hyper granular. We can walk people through this. He stacked the items that didn't require any of his direct medical attention, just his medical knowledge. That was what they were looking for. And though when he was in residency, he felt like he didn't have any free time. He looks back at it now going, okay, I did have more than enough time for those things. They were 2 days of focus, max a month, let's say. But he had about 6 of them stacked up before he completed residency. Once he graduated, once he completed, he was hired by a hospital and had a steady stream of income. He had all these other wonderful things. Then he started doing the ones that were more like exchanges for time or formal medical directorships, that were important for credentialing purposes that he couldn't do during residency. And he started with the lowest hanging fruit to the highest. But he stacked in an order where he always emphasized lowest risk and other things. This is a luxury that a young physician might have over an older physician who's looking to transition into an independent clinic, calling a company like ours or something like that. This guy set himself up really well in the beginning so that there was none of that need to take on a higher risk entity for higher compensation because it might be the only thing available in a particular town. And he stacked it up in such a way that he was able to give himself 2 months off a year in addition to all these other wonderful things that I've been highlighting about what this physician has going on. Because of the way he stacked it. The ones that were time dependent had these kinds of factors that would allow him to do this one thing. He set up this one account with this one particular wealthy individual who went on one vacation for a solid month to this one place on the planet. And he joined him as his physician on site at that place. But he had the time to consider all of these things because he took a intelligent approach to the stacking aspect of it. And these things sound wonderful. They sound almost too good to be true. But he did it in a way that he could take the time to say no to the ones that did not meet the wild dreams and yes to the ones that did. And he was very patient about it. And it still sounds like a 28-year-old cranked this out. He was thinking about this when he was 23, probably.
Mm-hmm.
He was setting up a really smart path so that only the right pieces fell in and you did not have to worry about some of the ones that were a little less perfect, less
Like the 5 to 10 year overnight success story, right? I feel like
yes.
that kind of like made it feel a little bit more like realistic. And I know it is. It's like a true, true story. But like you said, sometimes you're hearing this and you're like, it's too good to be true. But like you said, he was proactive and intentional. I mean, even like the physicians who start talking to us in training,
Yeah.
maybe they're not even a formal client, but they're just learning, they're absorbing, they're listening to this podcast, everything. I mean, they can get so far ahead of their peers
Oh,
just by like making a
absolutely.
money game plan, early and becoming aware and understanding it. So, but also for any listener out there who's mid-career, later in their career, you're never too early or too old to reinvent yourself, right? So
So
maybe
true.
take this as an opportunity and reflect and ask yourself that question, like of everything we've heard today, what's one, two, three things that you can act on in the next 24 hours. Um,
100%.
Take out your pen, piece of paper, notes app. I'm always about action in the podcast, right? It's like what's something that you could act on in the next 24 hours based on everything you've heard today so far. So I think we're at about 5-6 minutes here, so I don't want to go too far over. Um, like oftentimes with physicians and their money, right, it's kind of like me. If I google my symptoms, I remember I had an ulcer in my eye like a year and a half ago. I thought it was pink eye, and of course I'm like, don't google it, I know not to google it, but I have to google it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you have cancer of the eye, you might have to get your eye taken out, you're gonna have a glass eye, all the things, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Absolutely.
free, and I feel like it can be that way with money, where there's kind of that like like I don't know what to do, like because of the paralysis of the fear and the uncertain, right? So for someone who's kind of like nodding their head, like, okay, this makes sense. I understand what it feels like to feel a little bit of like paralysis, or I'm scared to leave my healthcare system because I don't want to take this much risk. I guess what would you say, like just what simple piece of advice would you give, or what would be like the first potential step?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do, but I would say one thing is you do need to budget some time to consider these things, no matter where you are in your career. Um, as with my company, we often get approached by physicians who are ready to go right now from their perspective. And we always say, I wish you would have considered this thing for at least a few months, or at least stopped and chewed on this before we started this journey, or before you decided you wanted to start this journey, because all the risk and variables that are outside of your control and my control are affected by your consideration of all these things first. So sometimes we'd say like, okay, pump the brakes. Let's do these things first, and then we'll set you up with this clinic, or we'll build this thing for you. We'll build this other entity for you. Um, a lot of this you can do yourself without us, but the common misconception of pursuing all these is that there's no help, there's no entity that'll set you, there's no guide. Um, that's why MSOs were created. Uh, Managed service organizations are a pretty, I would say, not common business type. There's really only probably a few of us per state, but it's a well known in the, I'd say, the higher tier medical community business type. Um, TPAs, third party administrators, are another entity that certain states have that certain people have not considered as groups you can participate in. And I'd say that you have to take the time to consider aspects like these in order to go on any of these paths successfully without any concern or gritting your teeth or rushing head into a fire.
That makes
You can do all these things.
That makes total sense. So being intentional about it, which is funny. My business partner and I, and we found out why we like work so well together after we took the disc profile, like, after already working together for 3 years. Because my personality, I get an idea and I want to go. So I would hear you say medical directorship today, and I would like immediately probably like call you and be like, all right, dude, how do I do this?
Yeah,
Versus like my business partner, he's a little bit more on the analytical side. Like, let's sit down and analyze this, build a spreadsheet.
yeah,
And that's why him and I have worked so, it's kind of like the visionary and the implementer, right? So it sounds like have a vision. We brought a lot of great ideas today, but make sure you don't, you implement it in a way that's strategic, so you don't end up with some type of, crazy malpractice claim, or like something
sure.
crazy. So tell us, go ahead. Sorry.
Real quick on that one, one of the, when I was saying a lot of people don't know that MSOs even exist, sometimes we find that physicians are creating these companies or these other revenue streams, and then the new handcuffs are not the financial problem. It's now they have to operate this clinic. Now, like, they've created enough problems for themselves. Yeah, the compensation's nice, but now they're a slave to their work. They're just constantly
Hmm.
working about this one job, have this one thing, and they can't escape it. They're just stuck keeping this wheel turning. That's why leveraging an MSO makes so much more sense. You know, you're not in the business of HR. You're not in the business of picking up your dry cleaning. You're a physician. Focus on that, and the rest of these pathways will be open to you. Don't. Um, I like to fly places, but I have no idea how to fly or build a plane. Um,
That
yeah,
was a good full circle moment. So, Kona, like if Kona, if someone came to you, like you would be helping like all this, kind of building the
yeah,
design, building the strategy, and then also like implementing things. So, like you said, they can delegate a lot to you and your team, and just focus on being a great physician and a great human and doing things they enjoy outside of work.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, don't worry, some things take time, some things do not. Some groups contact someone like us, and they don't put much time into maintaining and perpetuating this thing at all. Some spend all their time on it. And I'm not saying our strategy is necessarily better or anything else. I'm just saying that you can choose where you're putting your time.
Mhm.
And that needs to also be considered. So when I said like the key step that people need to think about is you need the first budget time to even consider going down these pathways. That's step one, and that's going to take you a long way.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like at the end of the day, it's just being intentional about your time and carving out the time to figure out what's the right thing for you. I was going to ask you, what would be one thing you'd want to leave listeners with about just kind of their options, their value, and their future. But I think that's it,
Yeah, totally.
unless there's anything else you want to add.
I mean, some people are thinking that the industry is awful. You can't control it, and you're going down a river, and you have no personal control or freedom about anything. You've gone down this path, and it's just going. You cannot stop it. If you take a moment and consider these things, you can have this control. You may even determine that none of this is going to work for you. But the important aspect of podcasts like this and other things is really consider the financial aspect of all the choices that you're making. And this is critical. This is one thing they often don't have the time to think about, or the head's not above water. They don't have the ability, truly the ability to stop and think about it. You're just going and going. But this is all possible. Doing these things is possible. Even if you don't want to be in an independent clinic, even if you just want to retire early, or whatever your intention is, you can do it. But taking time to listen to shows like this, consider the things we've talked about in this podcast. This is important.
Yeah.
This is an investment in yourself.
No doubt about it. And there's no better investment than you'll make than investing in yourself. And life is too dang short to do something you don't enjoy. I know we all have seasons, right?
Yes.
But I think I heard something from Darren Hardy who said, like, you're not, if you're at a job you don't like you're not a tree, leave. Like you're not physically stuck in the ground.
Yeah.
Leave. I know it's easier said than done, but I love the what you said about investing in yourself. So for everybody listening right now, what's one action item that you can take in the next 24 hours? Get your pen, notebook, piece of paper, notes app on your phone, put it on your calendar, make sure you get it done in the next 24 hours. And maybe it's, going to Kona's website and checking out Donovan and booking a free consult. That could be one action item for you. It's free and probably extremely valuable. I can only imagine what you do in a one-on-one setting. But where can listeners find you? Do you have any awesome free resources, like anything else that you want to just say about how awesome you are?
Well, you've set me up so well. I don't need to say anything. No, we're a humble group. We've learned a lot from our mistakes and other people's mistakes. So this is good. I appreciate it. Well, we're at Kona Medical Consulting. Kona Medical Consulting. You can go to konamedicalconsulting.com. You can find us on all the socials, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Um, and if you mention this podcast, obviously I'll know the topic you want to talk about, but I'll also extend your free consult as well to make sure that we cover more. You can ask me anything, and it's not just me. There's hundreds of us at Kona, and we're all there's many of us who are more than willing to sit down with you and walk you through the stuff. It's never too late. It's never too early. I would at least consider going down one of these pathways for your long term.
Yeah.
Your older self will thank you.
Amen to that. All we can do is be intentional and proactive.
Mhm.
Do our best. But thank you so much. That was awesome. We'll get a link down to your website in the show notes below, just so everybody knows. But just Kona Medical Consulting.com. I always love doing this and having guests on because I always learn a ton. So I know what I'm talking with a lot of IML clients about over the next couple months in addition. So thank you
Perfect.
so much for being here and appreciate you. That was awesome, my friend. We'll do this again soon. We'll do
Sounds
like a 10-part series.
Thank you.
All right.